Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be going over 5 destinations that I think you should visit if you are an Anglophile coming over to England for the first time. If you're new here, hello, my name is Nicole. I'm a Canadian that moved over to England and I now live here. Now, one of the things that I'm finding that when I look online for any content about being an Anglophile, especially before I moved here, it was like I wanted to find my people that are like my kindred spirits and love England and British culture as much as I do. Now, English, to me, from what I understand, an Anglophile means someone that has like an affinity for England, whereas the UK, you have to understand, the UK is comprised of Scotland and parts of Ireland and Wales. So we are primarily speaking about England today, but I often find that if you're an Anglophile and you're coming over to England, you typically won't want to take a super long flight and then just stay in England. There's going to be other places in the UK that you want to visit yourself. So here is my 5 places that I think you should visit if you are coming over here for even a 2-week trip, even a 10-day trip. So if Paul was here, he would feel like I was completely betraying Bristol because it's not on my list, but if you know me, you know Bath is gonna be the first place on the list that I think you should visit. Bath is stunning. We live about 25 minutes away from Bath, and I still, every day I'm like, I wanna move to Bath. It is just stunning. Think Jane Austen, think Georgian, think every period drama that you have seen, and like a romantic period drama. And you go to Bath and this is how I describe it for people. You know when you go to a wedding, you've gone to a fancy wedding and you walk in and there's flowers everywhere, there's lights, and you walk in and you're like, ah, and it just makes you like full up with just wonder. Every time I go to Bath, and I've lived 20 minutes away from Bath for the last 4 years, and yet it still pulls that feeling out of me. It is just so charming. It's so quaint. And one of the reasons why I love Bath and one of the other places on this list is that it's big enough, but it is small enough that you can walk it. So that's another practical reason I would love to move to Bath, is that it is a big enough place that it's not like you're in a town, but say Paul and I went out for dinner, even if you're on the outskirts of the city, almost you could walk if you really wanted. Whereas here, I feel like it's a bit more spread out. You could still walk, but you might be walking for a couple hours. So if you're unfamiliar with Bath, Bath is called Bath Spa technically, and there is a hot spring basically underneath the city, and I believe the Romans kind of built it up, and so you can go visit the Roman baths. They've got Thermae Bath Spa. That's, I think, officially what Bath is called. But yeah, so you can make a whole weekend out of it, or you can just do it for a day or 2. Now, the Roman baths, I've been 3 or 4 times and I still haven't taken it all in. There's just so much history. One of my favorite things about living here is that there is so much history. If you saw my video where, I actually don't know if I'm gonna add this into the series, but in the video where I'm talking about traditional British meals, I mentioned in that video that my husband booked a restaurant so we could go for a Sunday roast, and he didn't book it at the time where there was a Sunday roast. And when we are walking into this restaurant where we've been tons of times before, I see a plaque on the wall, and I took a picture of the plaque. I just posted it over on Instagram, actually, over on the Daily Davis UK, and it says on the wall about how it was a museum, and the architect, I believe, loved Venice, and so they made this building in the style of Venice. And I walked in and I was like, oh, I don't really see it. And Paul's like, I do. He's like, look over there. And it totally looked like Venice. And then when I put it on Instagram, my friend Lorena commented and she was like, I've been there so many times and I've never seen that plaque. And I just love that you can look in any little corner and you'll see a plaque or some type of nod to history. And It's like that in Bristol, of course, but in Bath as well, it's just, I feel like it's in your face. You can see that history so much more, whereas in Bristol, you're looking out for little plaques. And I mean, that's a whole another topic of conversation. A lot of Bristol was bombed, and so you might not see the history as much here because of that. But in Bath, it's so stunning. It's so beautiful. You can walk everywhere. They've got so much history with Jane Austen there, with Mary Shelley. Again, the Roman baths is a whole day that you can spend there. And then next door, there is the pump rooms in Bath. And that is like the most stunning afternoon tea experience that you'll ever experience, because they've got the music and it's so lovely. So if you are gonna come over here, I mean, I've spoken for 6 minutes just about Bath. You have to visit Bath. Like, you have to get out of London. It's not that far, maybe an hour and a half on the train, and get to Bath. Now the next place that has made my list is York. Oh my gosh, I went to York for the first time about a year ago, last June of 2021, and York gives me the same feeling that Bath does, but it's more medieval. So think of Bath like Georgian and Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice and like that type of Georgian feel. I feel like if you've seen any of those classic movies, like those remakes, or you've read those books, you can picture what I'm talking about. Whereas York is just more medievally. So think, I can't even think of a word just besides medieval, but like, I was gonna say guillotines and like castles and just a little bit dark. And so I love York because again, you can see that history and you can see that culture. The only reason why I don't have such a love for York as much as I do for Bath is that I feel like you can see Georgian buildings like you have in Bath anywhere in the world. Maybe not to the quantity that Bath has, but you can see Georgian buildings other places in the world. Whereas with York, and especially if you go to the Shambles, and I've got some footage that I'm going to be showing you of what it's like in York, but especially when you're in the Shambles area, it does feel like you are stepping out into a set. And as much as I loved it, I just wouldn't want to feel like I'm living on set, if that makes sense. And so yeah, but I absolutely loved it. Now, one of the things that blew me away with York, I would imagine it's also because they have so many tourists in York, but let me tell you something. Bath has a ton of tourists and they are not as friendly as the people in York. Like, it was like, Paul and I were like, are we being punked? Because people are just so friendly here. Now, alongside the Shambles, which if you've seen Harry Potter, you definitely will see the similarity between the Shambles and Diagon Alley. But there's also York Minster, which is a huge church, essentially, like huge. That's another thing that I think a lot of people, when they're talking about being an Anglophile, that I never see anybody touch on, is there are so many churches and cathedrals and minsters everywhere, and they are just incredible to see. All right, now I'm gonna kind of go off the course a little bit. I know this series is about being an Anglophile, but if you are going to come all the way over to England and do a little England tour, please stop in Edinburgh. Especially if you go up to York. I believe Edinburgh is only like an hour and a half, hour and 50 minutes away from York. And so, oh my gosh, you have to visit. Now, Edinburgh is the only other place besides Bath that I could see myself living. And I don't really count Bath as somewhere different because I live 20 minutes away from Bath. Now, with that being said, my husband and I absolutely love Edinburgh. It is so cool. There is so much history. We went and did the Edinburgh dungeon tour there, and it's like an interactive experience. I wanted to do the York one, but we didn't have time. But with that being said, we did actually do a walking York dungeon tour, which was pretty cool. But Edinburgh is like very gothic. It also has a medieval feel to it, but definitely more to like the gothic style. And again, I think that the reason I love all of these places that I've mentioned so far is that you can see the history as much as you can learn about it and hear about it. And so I absolutely love Edinburgh. Now, one of the cool things about Edinburgh is that, again, they have the plaques of like what has gone on where, but also if you do any of the tours, you can see like signs of what they went through in the plague. And if you love history, oh, Edinburgh is a dream. Now let's go back down to England for a second. Let's go almost all the way down to the like southern tip, and let's talk about Dorset. I went to Dorset for the first time last year, and only for a day, but it was stunning. Now Dorset is, I think it's like Lyme Regis was like, Dorset is like the area, and Lyme Regis was like the spot we were at because it's the closest, nicest beach, if you will, from where we are in Bristol. And so we went down there, and most of the beaches here are pebbles, they're not sand. And with that, Lyme Regis is on the Jurassic Coast. Now there's a movie about this where I've got to look it up. It's called Ammonite, and it's on Netflix here in the UK. I don't know if it is in other parts of the world, but it was so cool to see just the different types of fossils, believe it or not, because where I come from in Alberta, it's like dinosaurs everywhere. They find dinosaurs everywhere, especially in southern Alberta. And so it was really cool to see kind of the difference in the fossils and just the difference in geography. And it was just so interesting to go down there. I definitely want to go back. Beyond that, it is stunning. I don't know what it is about people that live close to the sea, but they seem to take care of their homes so much more than people in these big cities like Bristol. And so it is just such an experience to be driving down into Lyme Regis and be seeing like huge, monstrous bushes of hydrangeas. It is like the most stunning thing that you will see. And it's in a cute little quaint town where there's bunting everywhere. And yeah, I haven't gone to the seaside a lot since living here, which is beyond me. But honestly, if you can get down to the seaside, it is such a cute, quaint experience that would just add so much pleasure to your trip. Okay, last but not least, I can't talk about coming to England without London being on the list. I think the thing is with London, I feel like it's taken me quite some time in order to enjoy London, honestly. And I am going to have a video in this series where I take you to London because my aunt is visiting from Canada, so we are scheduled to go and see her. But I think the thing is with London is that you need money to go to London. And yes, you can do things in London on a budget, but I feel like the cons for visiting London outweigh the pros if you don't have money. And so it's loud, it's noisy, it's stinky, people are rude. But if you are looking to have a luxury experience and have a posh experience, there are places in London that you can get that, and you are getting like the top of the top experience. If you're going for history, it's not that London doesn't have history, I just feel like you're going to be combating a lot more traffic and people and busyness to get to that than you would if you went and explored other places. That being said, I haven't done most of the London tourist attractions. I mean, I've definitely walked by Buckingham Palace. I have seen the London Eye and Tower Bridge, but you know, you get to a bridge and then you're like, oh, that's nice. The London Eye, again, I think it wasn't working the last time that I went, but I would like to do it at some point, but I think I want to do it with somebody that comes over as opposed to Paul, because Paul has done all of these things already. And so I know it's not going to bring him as much joy as it would bring me. But with that being said, honestly, London was going to be on the list, but if there is any place that I think you could skip, I think it's London. Anyways, my friends, that is it for this video. If you're planning a trip over here, I would love to hear what you are planning on doing, where you're planning on going. Let me know if you didn't like my list, I guess, and you think London should stay on the list. Maybe don't do that one. Keep it to nice comments only. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.